How's it going, Brian?
How's it going?
Oh, okay, good morning. My name is Brendan Manning. I'm the Vice President of Education and Environment with the AGC of New York. I want to welcome everybody here today. I wanted to give everyone a heads up that we are recording this session. So if you know anybody in your firm or anyone else that would like to see a copy, we'll save a copy on the members side of our website. We'll set that up later today. I just wanted to let everyone know as well, if you have any questions, you should have a Q&A box. You can type in your questions. We can save those questions till the end. So with that, I want to introduce our speakers today. I want to introduce Brian McGuire and Liz Ritchie. Liz is the manager of the Western projects for New York State EFC. And Brian is the senior manager for procurement and program compliance with the EFC. So with that, I will turn it over to Liz. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Brendan. So today we're going to be walking through the New York State Revolving Fund program and some of our program requirements. As Brendan said, I work in the Western project section. That just means I cover projects that EFC funds Central New York through the Western part of the state. So I work in the engineering division, and our goal is to help municipalities kind of navigate our program and figure out how to use the program requirements. And today we're going to be walking through that for you guys of what contractors may be interested in learning more about, and kind of helping communities be successful with their funded projects. And then Brian will hop in and talk about specifically our MWBE program. So what we're going to go over today is a little bit about EFC, just so you have the context. I don't know how many folks on the call today are familiar with who we are and the programs that we run. And then we'll talk a little bit about our terms and conditions. We will specifically talk about our MWBE, SDVB, and DVE compliance program, which I think that's probably one of our most common program requirements that has been around for a long time. Then we will spend some time talking about our American Iron and Steel and our new BABA requirement for federal projects. So we'll talk a little bit about what those acronyms mean. We're going to touch on some other requirements that we have, any closeout paperwork and site visits that we do here on our end of the project. And then, of course, cover some Q&A. So to start, who exactly is EFC? EFC stands for the Environmental Facilities Corporation, and we are a public benefit corporation that administers funding for New York State water infrastructure projects. So depending on the funding source that a municipality may have, you may have seen some of these terms in your contract documents. We administer the Clean Water State Revolving Fund that funds or provides low capital costs for sewer and wastewater treatment plant projects. We also do the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund. We work with our partners at Department of Health for that program. That's to fund drinking water projects. We offer various state water grants. So if you are familiar with our water, our WIA grants, Water Infrastructure Improvement Act projects, that can be coupled with an SRF loan. But we offer various grants that come with some of our program requirements. And then what's new is we also started administering federal bipartisan infrastructure law funding, and those are administered directly through our state revolving programs. So in essence, we provide financial assistance for communities to build their projects. So we offer short-term financing, which allows municipalities to pay their consultants to design their projects, and it also helps pay for any construction costs through a 5-year term for their loan. We eventually will convert that to a long-term financing. So think of that as your home mortgage. Typically up to 30 years, they pay us back for their project costs. And through both of those, we can offer reduced interest rates. Either we can provide interest-free financing to municipalities to build their projects, or offer subsidized or market rates So we're basically just another option for them than going to a typical bank because we can offer some really great interest rates to them to make it more affordable. I won't spend too much time on this, but so we are a state agency, but we get money annually from the federal government, from EPA, that seeds our program. We then loan out money to municipalities to build their projects, and depending on the interest rates that a project may or may not have, those interest payments come back into the program and help build the amount of money that we have available to provide for low-cost funding for our projects. And it really helps revolve and grow our fund over time so we can fund more and more projects. And the reason why I'm kind of mentioning we have all these loan programs and grant programs is, as you can understand, we have state grants, we have federal grants, loans, things like that. Our program requirements change based on the program that the municipality has received funding for, which can be kind of difficult to navigate. And we try to work with communities pretty early in their project development to make sure that they kind of stay on course to meet our requirements, and that trickles down into the construction contracts that are signed to build the projects. And we just want to make sure that everything stays in compliance. So we do that by asking communities to include our terms and conditions in all the agreements that are signed. So any contracts that are paid for with EFC funds must include the terms and conditions. And if any contracts are executed without the funding, it may be ineligible for our funding. So we work with communities very closely as we're doing our approvals to make sure that's included. And we're going to touch on all of these things, but the program requirements is where all of the very detailed information for our various requirements are included. So MWE, EEO, American Iron and Steel, and so on. And because of the different funding sources that we have different packets that are available. The municipality is required to put these in the contract, but just making you aware that these would be present in any construction contracts that are executed with a community. So the three versions that we have is if you are working on a project that is being funded with our traditional state revolving fund projects, that's our typical financing that we do most of the time. We also have state financial assistance projects. That is if you receive a state grant but aren't using the financing with it. And then what is the most current, well, not the most current, excuse me, the newest terms and condition that's been provided is if a community has received federal bill loans or grants and have been designated equivalency. I'm not going to go through that in detail on this presentation, but we will, we do identify projects that are equivalency as part of our process of listing projects, and we will notify the community if that applies to them, but just know that we have a separate packet for that. And again, the municipality is required to make sure the correct one is included in the contracts. But these terms and condition packets are used for both clean water and our drinking water state revolving fund. They're the same version. Depending on the funding source and the terms and conditions packet, different requirements apply. And I have a couple slides that breaks that down. And for each of these terms and conditions, we have guidance packets available on our website. They may not be included in your contract because just the terms and conditions that actually has the legal language of all the program requirements is required to be in your contract. The guidance packets are really helpful because they'll walk through in more general terms what the program requirements mean and some guidance on how you can comply with them. So again, those are available on our website, and the QR code at the top corner will bring you to the terms and conditions page. And they're typically updated annually, but not necessarily so. It kind of depends if we're making any changes throughout the year. So again, this is just a straight list of the typical program requirements that we have. This chart is a little small, but it gives you an idea of a typical state revolving fund program requirements, what's required depending on contract size and what type of contract you are. Most projects that we fund are the top box: construction, treatment works on drinking water project. That just means like your typical wastewater treatment plant, sewer project. We also fund non-treatment works projects, which would be like non-point source, green infrastructure type work that's not associated with the sewer or drinking water system. And of course, we have requirements for non-construction contracts, but that's more geared towards service providers like engineering consultants. But our terms and conditions include minority and women-owned business enterprise requirements, service-disabled veteran-owned business enterprise, disadvantaged business enterprise, equal employment opportunity, American Iron and Steel, Build America, Buy America, Davis-Bacon federal prevailing wage, restrictions on lobbying, and prohibition of telecommunications. We're going to talk on later slides what each of these specifically are, and we'll touch on when they may apply or not, because it again depends on your source of funding. This chart breaks down the 3 different terms and conditions packets we talked about. So I'll just kind of highlight a couple differences. For the state revolving fund, which again is the typical terms and conditions we see on most projects, the standard MWE, AIS, Davis-Bacon, and we do require a project sign. But for example, grant-only projects, state financial assistance projects that only receive state grants, so no loan. For example, you'll notice that those projects do not have to comply with AIS, Davis-Bacon, or restrictions on lobbying. Equivalency on the far right, again, is our newest packet available for projects typically using our bill funding. They have additional requirements that pulls in the telecommunication equipment exclusion and DABA. But generally, a lot of the information is the same. DBE would be required instead of MWE. But Brian will go over those program differences here in a few minutes. Oh, and by a few minutes, I mean right now. So I'm going to turn it over to Brian to touch on our MWE, SDVOB, and DBE compliance program, and I will toggle through the slides for you.
Okay. So like Liz said, the MWBE requirements apply to any contracts where EFC provides financial assistance. And those goals are either 20% or 30%, and they can be combined MBE and WBE. Non-construction contracts, professional service contracts, the threshold is 25,000. Anything over that needs to meet those requirements. Construction contracts, it needs to exceed 100,000. And the goals can be met in one of 2 ways. You either meet the goals with MWBE compliance, utilization, or you have to demonstrate good faith efforts to achieve those goals. There's also a QR code in the top right-hand corner there that would direct you to our website where there's more information. So for the good faith efforts, if you are submitting a waiver, this is the list of items that we're looking for. We would need a brief letter of explanation of why you are requesting the waiver. We need the schedule of values, and that breaks down the tasks that may be able to be subcontracted, and we will take a look at that as well. You need to do ESD searches through the New York State contract system. So for each task, like if you're looking for survey, excavation, we would look for an ESD search for each of those tasks, and you would utilize the commodity codes on that ESD system. And if you're not familiar with that, EFC can help you work through that and your minority business officer that you would be working with. When you do those ESD searches, we would want those listed on an Excel spreadsheet, also known as the solicitation log. So this spreadsheet shows the certified firms, how you contacted them, and the result of those contacts, whether it's through a telephone call, email, things like that. And we ask that you contact them in 2 different ways. So through a phone call or an email if you don't get through the first time. If there are change orders over 25,000, the contract value increases due to that change order. A revised utilization plan or waiver may be required. The contractor should seek additional MWBE participation when the scope of that work increases. For SDVOB, it's basically the same process as MWBE, but obviously different forms are involved. We're dealing with ESD with the MWBE, and with SDVOB, we work with New York State OGS. So same process, different forms. Role of the prime contractor, like we said, understand and incorporate the mandatory terms and conditions. They should be in each of your contracts. Conduct the good faith efforts towards the goals that we just talked about. And you want to be providing your utilization plan or waiver request with the minority business officer that is designated by the municipality that you're working with. They are responsible for reporting this information to EFC. We work with the MBO, the contractor works with the MBO. The utilization plan and waiver request form should be prior to contract execution. So you should be working with your MBO on that. So you're working with the MBO basically on all compliance issues. And you should also be submitting copies of the subcontracts to the MBO as well. These are the forms that you really have to be concerned with: the utilization plan and the waiver request. Make sure the UPs and waivers are submitted with proper documentation. That's what we're looking for. The MBO is looking for that. If any additional documentation is required, please be sure to submit them in a timely manner. If they are not submitted in a timely manner, EFC on this side will hold up dispersing monies. If UPs or waivers are not approved, we do hold disbursements. So it's very important to submit that documentation thoroughly and in a timely manner. Same thing with paying your subcontractors, your certified subs. We would like that done in a timely manner. Proof of payments should be submitted to the minority business officers, and failure to do so, again, may end up holding disbursements. So it's very important to pay them in a timely manner and submit the proof of payment information. The DBE program we touched on a little bit. This is for those projects that are considered equivalency. And again, same process as MWBE and SDVOB, but we do have different forms. There's different certifications. It's with the Small Business Administration. It's with New York State DOT. It's with US DOT. And DBEs can be certified in New York, New Jersey, Connecticut. I believe there's a self-certification for DBE. And again, the QR code is in the top right. You can log on there with your phone using your camera. And all of these forms are also located on EFC's website. So we do have some videos on our website. We have forms, we have Q&A. It's a good place to go if you have any questions on any of these compliance areas. You can also reach out to me as well. I think that's the last slide.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. All right, so now we're going to hop into the world of American Iron and Steel and the Build America, Buy America Act. First, we're going to talk about American Iron and Steel. This requirement is included on all clean water, so again, wastewater treatment works projects, and all drinking water state revolving fund projects. So this is a standard SRF requirement. It does apply to all permanently installed materials and products made primarily of iron and steel. So if you have anything that's temporarily installed, like temporary sheeting or temporary fencing, that would not need to apply. It's really anything that's permanently installed on a project. It does not apply to materials that are made less than 50% iron and steel measured by cost. You cannot split out non-AIS materials from a project if compliance cannot be met. This is really important because and the entire project must comply with AIS, even if $1 is being funded by the SRF program. So we have municipalities or contractors ask us from time to time, oh, well, we can't get a AIS compliant material. Can we just not fund it with the SRF program? Doesn't work that way. Unfortunately, it's got to be the entire thing. So we will be spot checking this during the construction process, and the municipalities will be making sure that that this requirement is met throughout the life of the project. But there is more information on EPA's website for AIS. So definitely recommend that. There's a lot of Q&As, information, presentations that they've done for vendors and contractors. So it's a lot of good information there. But we're going to touch a little bit on what materials have to comply. So these are a list that EPA has put out in some of their documents, common materials that must comply. So the typical ones, pipe and fit, any iron or steel pipe and fittings, valves, ductwork, rebar, precast concrete. That's a big one, just to kind of flag the way that the requirement is written. Just know, in addition to the rebar that's in precast concrete, the structure itself has to be cast in the US as well. It's a little unique to precast than it is for all these other items that are predominantly iron or steel. But everything on that top list must comply no matter what. The bottom section here, examples of materials that do not need to comply for AIS: pumps, motors, drives, SCADA equipment, conduit, mechanisms, loop gases, anything that's kind of considered a manufactured product. And again, I'll clarify, this is AIS. We're going to talk about BABA in a little bit. That is a little bit broader than that. So in order to show compliance, all materials that are delivered on site that must comply with American Iron and Steel should come with an AIS certification from either the manufacturer or the supplier. Given an example on the right side of the screen, this is provided in our terms and conditions guidance packet as a sample certification letter. The manufacturer can provide something different, but at its core, the certification must reference the project name, where in the United States the item was melted, made, or manufactured. So we want the specific location in the US, not just say made in America or made in the US. It needs to reference the specific iron or steel item covered by the certificate. And the certification should be signed and dated. And it needs to include a reference to AIS compliance. Oftentimes when we receive these certifications, we have to return them for edits because a lot of manufacturers may say it complies with Buy American, the New York State DOT program, etc. They're not equivalent to the SRF AIS compliance program. They're very similar. It can reference these other programs so long as it includes a reference saying that it's in compliance with the SRF AIS program. So just note that that's something that we do look for. But again, the certifications should include these 5, at a minimum, should include these 5 things. There is a waiver process available. So if prior to installation, we ask that if you're having trouble finding an AIS compliant product, that should really be communicated to the municipality, and they should communicate that to us. We have been able to work with EPA to do product research to identify if there is a manufacturer somewhere in the United States that can provide the product that you're having trouble finding, and they can provide resources and contacts to do that. And but the key is we and EPA don't want to see that those non-compliant products were installed prior to getting a waiver. So if EPA does the product research, they may come back and say, yep, we agree, there is nothing there, and or they'll provide feedback saying that there's someone else you can reach out to. But if EPA does come back and say, okay, I think it might be worth submitting a waiver request. Those waiver requests should be submitted by the municipality to EFC, but there will be some level of documentation as part of that waiver that the contractors may need help with to justify the request for the waiver. But there are 3 different types that are available to municipalities. There's the availability waiver, the cost waiver, and a de minimis waiver. The availability waiver just means like you just can't find it anywhere. There is no one that provides that product that you need for the particular project. Cost waiver, there's information on EPA's website that talks about the if a particular product increases the project cost, the overall project cost, so not just the contract cost, by a certain threshold, you may be eligible for a waiver. Those are pretty rare. I don't see those too often. It's mostly an availability waiver that would get sought by a community. But there is a de minimis waiver, which is a national waiver. That just means contractors and municipalities can use that at any time. And I think we're going to talk about that a little bit more detail in another slide. But essentially, if you have miscellaneous things that are iron and steel that are de minimis to the project, you can prepare a log and they don't need to comply. Like think things like nuts and bolts. You buy them in bulk and they're ancillary to the project and not it's something that you can log that doesn't need to comply with AIS. And so the request for the waiver needs to be on municipal letterhead and contain the following information: description of the good that you are seeking the waiver for, unit of measure, quantity, cost, time of delivery or availability, location of the project, name and address of the proposed supplier. And this last one's pretty important. I think this helps really justify to EPA why you're seeking the waiver, but a detailed justification for the use of foreign iron and steel products, including potential impact to the overall project schedule. I think EPA, is sympathetic that sometimes there's long lead times that could severely impact the schedule of the project, but that needs to be clearly explained in the waiver request for their consideration. But at the end of the day, EPA reviews all of the waiver requests. So while EFC may provide feedback to the municipality as it's being prepared, it does go through a review process at EPA to determine whether it's accepted or denied. A little bit more information about the de minimis waiver. Again, it permits the use of iron and steel products when they occur in de minimis incidental components of an SRF project. So there's going to be a couple different percentage thresholds that get kind of included in the review. And we recommend that contractors use a de minimis log to track this. But what you'll do is if you have de minimis items that you want to use the waiver for, you would prepare a log that itemizes all of the materials on a project that you're using, and then you would have a separate list of the de minimis items that you're claiming. And as long as your de minimis items that are identified comprise no more than 5% of the total cost of the materials used on the project, and that no one single item doesn't exceed 1% of the total cost of the materials used in the project, it is okay to use the de minimis waiver. But if you start exceeding those, then you can't use the waiver. So some examples of things that are covered by this waiver: essential but incidental to anything that's essential or incidental to the construction, incorporated into the physical structure of the project, and are often low cost, bought in bulk. So like I said, nuts and bolts, screws, things like that are the typical things that we see. But if you have any questions on whether you can or can't include something on your de minimis log, reach out to the project engineer that's assigned, reach out to the community. The community will reach out to EFC and get clarification. We'll be able to give you some feedback on whether or not it can be included on your de minimis log. These are just some more examples of acceptable de minimis items. and some items that we've been asked about or EPA has determined not to be de minimis. So we get asked a lot if a small valve or small fitting could be included de minimis. Those we wouldn't consider to be de minimis, and we would expect them to have an AIS certification on file. And again, contractors should prepare a record in a spreadsheet. EFC does have a template spreadsheet that we can share, but you're welcome to use whatever version works for you in order to track the 5%, 1% thresholds. Okay, so the Build America, Buy America Act, BABA, this is very new to us at EFC and to EPA. It is required for equivalency projects. And again, that's going to typically mean projects that have received bill funding, but we identify the projects that are equivalency on our project list, on our intended use plan that we publish. And the community will be notified ahead of time and will include the equivalency terms and conditions in the construction contract if it applies. So this program became effective May of last year, and BABA expands American Iron and Steel to include manufactured products. So that means all of the iron and steel manufactured products and construction materials used in the project must be produced in the United States. There is a waiver in place right now for projects where planning started before May 14th. So for communities that have been asked to include the equivalency terms and conditions, you are, they have been provided a waiver letter saying that they don't need to comply with this program requirement, and we're going to continue to do that review of projects as funding becomes available. So these slides are more to get people familiar with the program requirement, although we don't currently have any projects that have to meet this requirement, but it's still very new, and there's a lot that we're gonna be rolling out over the next few years. So what's covered for BABA, iron and steel? The American Iron, so BABA and the American Iron and Steel program are pretty much equivalent. And then BABA expands it to include manufactured products, construction materials. It applies to items incorporated into or affixed to the project. So again, permanently installed. And there's, like I said, this is very new, and there's going to be additional guidance that's going to be forthcoming from EPA over time, but I provided a link to EPA's website if you want to go and take a look at what they have available. There are a number of training videos that they've done for vendors and other groups, so they're definitely a great resource for more information than what I'm going to cover today. So again, we're going to kind of touch on the 3 categories for BABA. So for iron and steel, it's going to be the same as the AIS requirement for anything that is predominantly iron and steel. And all of those manufacturing processes have to occur in the United States. So nothing really new there if you're familiar with AIS. For manufactured products, final manufacturing has to occur in the United States. Cost of the components that are mined, produced, or manufactured in the US is greater than 55% of the total of all components of the manufactured product. And compliance with BABA requirements is determined by the manufacturer. So the contractor, needs to make sure that you're receiving the documentation, the certification for the project. But from what we understand from various EPA trainings, and this is still being expanded from EPA, but the requirement will be determined by the manufacturer. And then for construction materials that are non-ferrous, that would need to comply with the BABA requirement, it would include any non-ferrous metals, plastic, such as PVC pipe, for example, any glass, optic fiber, lumber, drywall, engineered wood. But we do have a list of items that would be excluded from the BABA requirement. So anything primarily iron and steel, which would fall under the AIS section. Manufactured products that we had talked about previously, cement and cementitious materials, aggregates, binding agents, flora, and of course, non-permanent or temporary items would be excluded. So more to come on BABA, but that was sort of just a snapshot of some of the details that we do have available at this time. And we're going to walk through some of our other requirements. So the terms and conditions for SRF projects and equivalency projects include requirements to follow Davis-Bacon federal prevailing wage. So these are required on all clean water and treatment works projects, which again, wastewater, sewer type projects, and all drinking water state revolving fund projects. Workers must be paid local, state, or federal prevailing wages, whichever are higher. Typically in New York, that tends to be New York State, but just know that there may be cases that federal rates are higher and you are required to match that if the federal rates are higher for a particular trade. And the federal prevailing wage schedules are available online. We work with municipalities to make sure that the correct wage schedule is included in the specifications for projects that you bid or contracts that are executed with you that include any labor work. So with the federal, what makes the federal prevailing wage is different than the state wages is that the applicable federal wages are locked in by the bid opening or the notice of award dates. So unlike the state wages that change annually and you are required to meet those annual prevailing wage rates and update accordingly, we work with the municipality to make sure the construction contract includes the federal wage schedule that applies to the project is in the contract. That gets set and gets used throughout the duration of the construction contract and should not be updated. So those wage schedules will be posted on the construction site for the duration of the contract, and it is something that we spot check when we come out on site. And depending on the type of work, you may see a heavy or building wage schedules. Those are the two typical ones that we use on the types of projects that we fund. So building wage rate should be used if you're doing any work in on or in a non-residential building. And heavy is typical for projects that are doing any water or sewer line projects. So usually between the two, depending on the scope of the work, that's typically what you would see in your projects. And for projects funded with the SRF program, you must conduct wage interviews to verify that the correct wage is being paid. And like I said, we work with the municipalities to make sure these are included in the specifications. They are able to be updated via addenda or change order. Sometimes we ask for that to happen to make sure that we're meeting the required 10-day, 90-day rule, which just happens to mean whatever wages are in effect 10 days before the bid opening, those are the ones that apply. And if it takes longer than 90 days between the bid opening and the notice of award, we may ask the municipality to update those wages, but typically the ones that are in effect 10 days before the bid opening are the ones that govern. But we do have some ways to make sure those are updated and make sure the project still stays in compliance. Telecommunications equipment exclusion. This is a requirement of equivalency projects that are using federal funds. And this means there's a prohibition on using certain telecommunications and video surveillance services or equipment. So if you have a project that includes common video and equipment that are kind of listed there about meter reading technology, instrumentation control systems, security cameras, and things like that are kind of some typical examples of what we may look for, what we might see funded through our projects. Those are not eligible for funding if certain manufacturers are being used. So I've listed a few examples here. So just keep that in mind if you know that a project that you're bidding on has SRF requirements and you see the equivalency terms and conditions. Hopefully you've read your terms and conditions and you see that the telecommunications requirements there. Just know that you can't provide equipment that are from these manufacturers. We do have a project sign for all the projects that we fund now. We had several years that we didn't require one. We are back in the sign business. So projects that are receiving funds must post a physical sign at the project site during construction. We have various versions depending on the funding that's provided. So we will work with the municipality at the time of bidding to make sure that they're clearly including the one that's applicable to their project. And we have a standard specification of schematic that should be included in the contract documents, so you know exactly what needs to be constructed on site. It should be erected within 21 days following the notice to proceed of the first contract. And we do have guidance available on our website to kind of help communities navigate which sign to use. But we do have one for SRF programs, and for our bill project has a specific sign required by EPA. Okay, and we are going to kind of wrap it up here talking about our document collection and site visit process. This will just help communities make sure that there are no holdup on construction payment disbursements. So what the document collection is, so we know that the terms and conditions are included in your construction contracts, and there's certain program requirements that you have to comply with. So EFC during construction has developed a tool that we provide municipalities so we can review construction documentation for EFC funded projects. It's I don't know, like a several page form that kind of fills out some basic questions and requires certain paperwork to be collected from the contractors or their subs and returned to us. So it's our way to assist the community to make sure they're complying with the requirements, to make sure there aren't any problems with funding the project. So that's completed by the recipient and returned to us. And we typically try to do this around 40% of the construction completion, because we're trying to do it at a point that you're mobilized, you've done some work, hopefully you have some subs on site, and eventually we review that information and we make recommendations directly to the recipients of things they should or shouldn't be doing. And so some of the things that the municipality or the consultant may be reaching out to you for: information on the construction schedule, any change orders. EFC has to review and approve any change orders that are executed on a project. So when in doubt, we're happy to look at any draft change orders if you're doing anything a significant change, or that eventually needs to get reviewed in order to be paid. Subcontractor agreements, lobbying certifications. If you execute subcontracts greater than 100,000, certified payrolls, and monthly MWBE SDVOB reports with proof of payment. The key there is we want to make sure that your subcontractors are being paid within 30 days. So the monthly reports are helpful to provide the community so they can prepare quarterly reports, which are submitted to EFC, and that may hold up disbursement. So again, those are just really helpful to make sure that things are being reviewed quickly. And then AIS certifications, that's the big one. As mentioned before, for all iron and steel products that are delivered on site, they should be coming with AIS certifications. And we spot check 3 or 4 products with the community, and you need to be able to provide those certifications. And non-responsiveness to providing this information to the community may lead to hold on payment. So like I said, AIS is really the big one I want to focus on, because if we don't get the certs we request, or there's issues with them and they need revisions, that has held up payments on many projects. So that's something that should really be focused on. These are just some common recommendations and best practices that we make to the community that really apply to how you can help the community. Know your EFC terms and conditions. Recommend reading through it. Ask any questions that you have. We're here to kind of help clarify anything, because we know it's a lot. You should be tracking your AIS de minimis items in a log if you're planning to use the de minimis waiver. You should be including EFC's, the same terms and conditions that's in your prime contract should be included in all subcontract agreements. Those requirements trickle down to your subs. So we like to see that the physical copy of the terms and conditions is in the subcontractor agreements. You should be conducting periodic wage interviews. We recommend preparing the monthly MWE SDVOB reports, because that can be used by the MBO. And the AIS certifications need to include these 5 things, as discussed previously. So EFC is going to come out to visit every site, or we sometimes have a subcontractor that comes out on our behalf, but we will come out to every project that we fund. And so we're looking to check on construction progress. We're checking posting, so we're looking for the Davis-Bacon federal wages to be posted. We're looking for a Davis-Bacon poster and the EEO poster that's on. We want that to be in a general area that your laborers are going to see them. And we're going to be spot checking for AIS. So again, in addition to the certifications that we're requesting, we're also going to be looking to see if any AIS materials have been delivered on site, making sure nothing says made in India or made in China. If we identify any non-AIS materials, they must be replaced. And typically payments by EFC to the municipality are held until they are corrected. So again, that's a big one. So we want to make sure that everything is in compliance. Okay, well, thank you so much. We are happy to answer any questions. I know that we have a lot of different requirements, some that you are familiar with and some that are brand new. So also I want to take this as an opportunity to say, this is one of the first presentations that we've given directed towards contractors. So really welcoming any feedback on content we didn't cover or things you want more information on, because we'd love to be able to provide more specific training towards contractors to help navigate our program. So Brendan, I'll pass it over to you.
Great. Thank you, Liz. Thank you, Brian. We appreciate your time today in putting this together for the members. At this point, we don't have any typed questions. I don't know if anybody's in the process of typing some as I'm speaking, but again, we can certainly, pass along any questions you may have. We can, obviously, both Liz and Brian's contact information is here as well. I'm sure they'll respect any emails from the members of any questions, but we can certainly do that as well. Again, I'm not seeing any questions at this point. I'm not sure if people are just trying to absorb the information and might have some later, but any final notes at this point?
I'd like to just say something. It's Caitlin Penner. I'm the Deputy Director of Engineering here at EFC. I also want the contractors that are on just to kind of keep in mind on projects that you've worked with EFC on. If you have any feedback or things that more specifically than this presentation covered that you'd want us to explore in more detail or provide additional training or maybe training videos on our website that would be helpful to you, we'd like that feedback. We'd appreciate that.
Great, thank you. We did have one little comment here actually from a member just saying this presentation would be good to have as part of as a kickoff for a project that might require some of these. So
yeah, that is something that we've discussed just from a workload standpoint. We haven't participated in a lot of pre-construction meetings, but it's something that we're exploring to try to be more involved in. So that's actually really helpful and something that I think we'll look more into.
Sure, and I'll certainly share a copy of this recording with you, and if it's something you want to build off of and redo on your own, you can certainly do that, or use this. Either one is fine. So Unfortunately, there are no more questions at this point. Hopefully, maybe you covered everything.
Well, we
had
know it's a
questions.
lot. So again, I know we kind of sound like a broken record. We definitely would love feedback
Sure.
to do any sort of tailored training. But we welcome any questions that come at a later time. And thank you so much for letting us speak today.
Excellent. Thanks again. Thank you for the entire staff for participating, and Liz and Brian, we appreciate your time. And again, I'll make sure anybody who's on the call, we'll make sure that we pass along this recording to the members. We'll keep it on the member side of the website. If anybody does want to see a recording of it, to share with other staff that might be interested. So again, thank you, everyone. I hope everybody has a great day and a great rest of your week. Thank you.
Thanks, Brendan.
Okay.